welcome to this webinar for in-house lawyers in the Shoosmiths series, Conversations with Clients. My name is Sebastian Price. I'm a partner in Shoosmiths Commercial Group, and today's webinar is on career progression for IHLs. So as always, the aim of this series, Conversations with Clients, is to share people's experiences and insights, which hopefully will be useful for everyone. And again, as usual, it's a half-hour session. Thank you very much for some absolutely brilliant questions you've already sent us. And if you've got anything, any more questions during the session, just put them on the Q&A function and we'll try and get to them. So it's great today to have with us Helen Wilson, who's Head of Legal at Weetabix. Hi there, Helen.
Good morning.
So Helen, I think I'm right saying you have worked in a variety of IHL roles, becoming Head of Legal, and you've also worked in private practice. In fact, you were a partner at, well, let us say, a fairly well-known law firm. So thanks very much, Helen, for coming on and sharing your thoughts about career progression. I did note, by the way, that you're part of the O-shaped lawyer movement, which is not something I'm familiar with. And I was struck by something they say, which is the legal profession is about its people. We need to look after them, invest in them, and help them achieve their potential. So obviously directly relevant to the topic of career progression. I mean, I feel that perhaps this webinar is more about what individual IHLs can do for themselves towards what they want from their careers. But anyway, perhaps I could just start by, would you like to outline your career to date?
Yes, no problem. And thank you for inviting me to join you all this morning. I have got quite an interesting and varied history. I qualified in 1999, which is about 100 years ago now. And when you say those words, you think, goodness me, I've been doing this for quite a long time. I joined DLA as a transactional finance lawyer, and I was there for 5 years. And then I joined a smaller firm called Geldards in the East Midlands, where I practiced banking and finance, specialising in invoice discounting and M&A activity. It sounds very exciting when you say it very quickly, but we had some moments. There is a reason why transactional lawyers kind of work all night and sleep all day. And then I had my first baby, and I was headhunted to become a partner in 2008. And I was a partner at Shoosmiths and had many happy years there with a great team. And then I moved in-house in about 2014, I think. And I went in to be on the board for an entertainment business. So I actually went to more nightclubs in my late 30s, I'm going to say, than I did in probably my 20s, much to my husband's distaste, but it's not so much fun when you're looking for slips, trips and falls and making sure people are mopping up after themselves, as it were. So that was quite entertaining. I then joined a software business that was getting ready for sale, which I supported, and then the role came up at Weetabix, which is close to home, and I've been at Weetabix for nearer 6 years now than 5. I joined in March 2018, and I was told there would be no legal issues. It was all sorted, and GDPR was going to be fine. It was all sorted, and as my team well know, that wasn't quite the case.
Amazing. Well, look, let's jump straight in. What is the secret of your success?
Well, I guess from a professional perspective, I've tried to have a bit of a growth mindset and tried to work with being flexible enough to kind of not stick to the same kind of path. I've just outlined my career history is kind of toed and froed a little bit from a finance lawyer to being a commercial lawyer in-house now. It's quite a different path that I've taken. I've worked hard to try and build my own brand, to try and be that glass half full type of lawyer, try and say, how can we fix this? How can we be an enabler, not a blocker, for example. I've also spent a lot of time developing personal relationships and a great network. I think that's really important for success, to keep those networks going despite those career moves as you progress through your career. I've also had the privilege of working with some great teams. The team at Weetabix are fantastic, a great bunch of lawyers and individuals. They all have great emotional intelligence. And I think you've got to have a bit of mental toughness to be in-house, a bit of resilience, and possibly a little bit competitive. As my teams know, there's a Christmas decorate your desk competition that we must win each year, which is quite entertaining. But it's about being that real person, that authentic self at work. And of course, having a supportive family at home. I'm at a black tie dinner this evening, for example. That can't happen without the support network at home. So they're the key things that I think have helped me in what I deem to be professional success.
Yeah, well, that's interesting you say, what you deem to be, because I think, reflecting that success, what success looks like it has to be, it's different for different people. And, very often, of course, it's about promotion, more responsibility, more pay. But it doesn't have to be. Each person surely has to decide for themselves what it is they want. But or can they? Actually, Helen, is it a treadmill in only one direction? So I'm just wondering how you went about making decisions about what was important for you, what to aim for. And but in my observation, it's hardly a revelation that those decisions are often much more difficult for women.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it goes back to that. When I qualified, the thinking was very much, well, you were in private practice, you went up the associate ladder, senior associate, whatever the layers were in those days, and you made partner, and that equated to success. I think these days we have to be a lot more flexible depending on our own personal life goals. And I think that I would encourage other people in the profession or joining the profession to think about what actually are their career goals. Do you have to be a partner? Do you have to be paid the top whack in a Magic Circle firm, for example, or would you have a very happy and successful life doing something else? I've had to think about how organized I am. I might make lists all the time. I'm big into prioritization. And I think you do have to accept that some days, weeks, periods of time might be more challenging than others, might be more demanding. You need the supportive team and home environment, as I've said. And I think it's also about putting enough in the bank to be able to kind of dive off to take the kids to a dance class, for example, or whatever you need to do. I think long gone are the days where it was jackets on the back of chairs at 7 o'clock and the house must be there until, COVID's done a lot to change the profession and to give us that flexibility. And I would encourage all individuals in teams to kind of embrace that, to get the best out of their work life and their home life as well.
Yeah. And also reflecting on your career path, you've changed positions quite a bit. What are your thoughts about that? When is it always can it always help? When can it help? Not help? I mean, and also, yeah, how relevant for an IHL do you think is law firm experience?
My personal view is that private practice law firm experience is essential to make a great in-house lawyer. You've heard already that I'm a finance lawyer by trade. I don't do that type of work anymore. We do a huge breadth of work in our in-house team here at Weetabix. But I think it depends on your career goals. As we've said, shouldn't be any fixed paths these days. And I would say enjoy your job, enjoy your day-to-day. Enjoy working with the people that you work with, because actually being an in-house lawyer is very different to a private practice lawyer, as I'm sure the audience will appreciate. It's an intense day, and the demands can be quite extensive. With people popping in to see you all day with lots of different queries, and from the sublime to the ridiculous sometimes. But I think that when you're ready to move on, you kind of know that. And I try and coach my teams, and I perhaps shouldn't say this in case they're listening too intently, but I try and coach them to say, look, I'll tell you when you're ready to move on. I've got a few years under my belt. I know when you're getting tired of this place, this organization, these clients, these internal clients, and you might need a fresh perspective. But I do think that law firm experience is essential to being a great in-house lawyer and a business partner as an in-house counsel.
Gosh, that's a really interesting insight. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that before. I mean, we say it a lot the other way around. We say to ourselves, it's really fantastic, for people in our law firm to have had in-house experience. We value that hugely, but I've never heard it the other way around. That's really interesting.
I think partly, Sebastian, it's because of the breadth of work that we cover, from data protection to intellectual property, to commercial contracts, to mergers and acquisitions type of work. I think if you've got a good solid grounding in a law firm where you've done perhaps your traditional training contract seats, or an exciting apprenticeship route, I think you've got that different exposure to different layers. And I think those that transferable skills, very much about the O-shaped program that we've mentioned already. It's about bringing those transferable skills on top of your lawyering that would make, in my view, a great in-house counsel.
Okay. Well, look, let me throw in a question that's come from the audience, which is a great question. How much do you think that career progression in-house is down to luck?
Well, that's a really interesting one. Certainly, there is an element of right place and right time. The Weetabix job for me, for example, came at the right time. It's got lots of advantages of me being here. It's a great brand to work with. But if the career path isn't there for you, you need a great business case, board support, and budget's got to be going your way. It can be really tricky in-house, I think. Sometimes it's kind of dead person's shoes, kind of, you've got to wait for someone to move on. But I think that post-COVID, our roles as in-house lawyers has changed so much, and we see so much, and we're certainly a busier team than we were. We manage about 150 kind of tickets or matters, if you like, on a monthly basis, and we're certainly finding our days are more intense. So I think if you can develop your role without necessarily your title, you could get some deeper enjoyment of the role, broader experience that might equip you to be getting ready for your next role, for example. But sadly, as a support function, it's very tricky unless you've got great data to support those promotion criteria, if you like, is my view.
Yeah. But following on from that, I also wonder whether would your view be that, does career progression depend more on you or the willingness of your organisation to help you get there?
I personally think it's a lot about you and what you want from your career, from your life goals, those kinds of things. I think it can be challenging depending on the organisation that you're in, the size of the organisation. Our business is about making cereal. It's not necessarily designed to progress lawyers. Headcount and budgets for support functions can be difficult, as I've mentioned. But if you can demonstrate the value of, or the cost saving, or the simplification of processes that could be achieved by doing X, or taking on Y role, or creating Y role, then the board will have to listen, but they don't necessarily have to agree. So it can be quite tricky. But I would always encourage my colleagues to drive forward what they want, to get the best out of their own professions and job satisfaction, essentially.
Yes. No, I can see that from the organisation as a whole. Yes, you make cereal, but in terms of let me slightly alter that then, because in the in the legal function, how can senior in-house lawyers effectively support and help more junior IHLs? Who are just starting their careers, because that's a question that's come in as well, which is a really good question.
Well, my view again is that business need O-shaped lawyers, well-rounded lawyers with great technical skills. But more than that, these days, I think there's a deeper demand for that emotional intelligence, that problem-solving ability, that business partnering and collaboration that I've talked about. Businesses are looking to simplify, or our business is looking to simplify. We need our people to be resilient within the legal function and as a supportive partner within the business itself. I do think that setting challenging objectives, which stretches them technically, but also encouraging that outside in. I think remembering to be a lawyer as well as a business person is really important, and I certainly crave that external professional feeling when you go outside of the business, take off the high vis, and walk past the smell of the Alpen factory, actually to go into a nice jazzy law firm and enjoy their offerings and their teachings. To keep current is really, really important. So I think that's a really important thing for in-house lawyers to remember to do, to utilize that law firm training. And then think about your internal clients, your actual business partners, their needs and challenges, and I guess encouraging those in-house lawyers to deal with whatever the problems might be in a business way, not necessarily just a legal way. Sometimes we see advice from some of our external law firms based in London, for example, that are reams and reams of words, and some of our people don't want to see the words. They need bullet point answers, for example. So it's an ability to adapt that style. And I think senior in-house counsel could try and encourage more junior counsel to kind of develop their own style and develop the responses to their clients accordingly. I think senior lawyers should be leaders, should encourage empowerment. There isn't time to supervise every single piece of work. There's no desire to supervise every piece of work, for example. But a consistent response from the legal team, I think, is important. And I think as part of that kind of thinking, hopefully the legal team can move itself from being that blocker that we talked about earlier, to building a reputation as an approachable, proactive team that's part of the business, and we're all kind of paddling the boat in the same way to try and achieve the same strategic objectives. So it's being a part of that team.
Yeah. Well, I'm now going to ask you something about imposter syndrome, because my observation is that over the last few years, I don't know if it's COVID or whatever, people are much more ready to show vulnerability, and issues of self-confidence and all these things I feel have come to the fore. I mean, I think everybody grapples with that, and I'm not sure how much everybody talks about it, but it's there. I think everybody knows that. The imposter syndrome just seems to be a classic thing that comes up again and again. So just any observations about that?
It is interesting. And as I say, I've explained my background as a finance lawyer. So when people come into my office and they say, I need a license to wrap a milk float in Weetabix yellow branding, it's a new one. And my team will be the first to call out that that's not my experience necessarily. But I think sometimes being old in the tooth, perhaps being a few years PQE, dare I say. I was blonde when I started the role at Weetabix, but I've gone grey quite quickly since. I think
You look absolutely blonde to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, it's just all colouring. But that projection of confidence, that I'll get back to you kind of response can be useful. But I think we all have a bit of that imposter syndrome, perhaps in our personal and our professional lives. And I think certainly COVID has taught me to be more empathetic, more understanding. And we quite often have a question for the room, which draft document shall I start with on this? What do you guys think? It's about joining and having that one team approach, I think, and actually recognizing that just because you've been around for a bit, you might not always know the answer, and that's okay. Actually, that's okay. Hopefully one can recognize those occurrences of imposter syndrome, or that not knowing the question in the room, for example, as another kind of angle on that, and utilize those law firm relationships, your network of people that you need, and just to remind yourself actually that you do know what you're doing. You've earned your stripes, and actually you probably know more than you think you know, and we should all have a little bit more confidence about our own abilities. It would be my view. But some days are more challenging than others, depending on the asks being made. I think we all have a bit of that.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I think it's so valuable to reflect back on successes that you've had. But support, I mean, mutual support is so important, and that I guess that can come from supervision, and also mentoring. So just any thoughts about how how to be supervised, how to supervise? Any thoughts about mentoring? Have you had that?
Yes, we do a lot of mentoring and coaching at Weetabix. Sometimes in my one-to-ones, I try and flex my style. I might invite my colleagues or team members to say, what do you need? Do you need to be coached or do you need to be mentored on this particular occasion, depending on what the ask might be. It is all about building that talent pipeline and kind of identifying that these are individuals within the business that are keen to progress, that want to develop, whether it's in your own business or another business. I do view that a senior lawyer's role is to kind of try and help those people progress, to share the benefit of the experience that we might have had when we were kind of younger, junior, whatever the right word is. I typically mentor non-lawyers who are aspiring leaders in our business, and we talk about influencing others and building brands, managing the demands of home and work, as we've mentioned. And there's lots of different tools in management toolkits that people will use, and different things will work for different people. But there's carving out time, one-to-ones, setting up inboxes for supervision, the importance of getting good instructions when you're thinking about supervising. What's the ask? What's the deadline? Those kinds of things. So I think it's just about interpersonal and management skills, I think, and trying to be that approachable, non-traditional lawyer type of personality, offering that support, and just probably remembering what it was like when when it was our first day in the office, back in the day when I think it was probably still no mobile phones and black and white telly in my day.
Let me turn to a couple of questions that we've had. So yeah, I guess it's the thoughts about how you learn, how you progress when you're in a small team compared to a very large and varied IHL team. So here's a question. I'm a sole counsel. What skills do I need to develop to secure my next job move and avoid my present glass ceiling?
Well, that's really interesting. I probably would start with, does that person enjoy being a sole counsel? What makes that person tick? Is there a need for any kind of gap analysis to see what you're missing or that you think you are? Going back to that imposter syndrome piece, perhaps. Um, I personally really enjoy working as part of a team. I get a lot of energy from that. And again, I've got a tremendous team here at Weetabix. Um, I think you need that solid and broad range of legal skills. That's always a given, obviously. Great communication, leadership skills, and a real ability to kind of try and add value or look at process improvements. And I guess, what would your strategy be if you're in a team with direct reports? What would you do differently? What would you need to do to develop that if it is indeed missing, which I'm not necessarily suggesting it is, but have you developed your people management and coaching skills if you are looking to move into a different role with more direct reports, for example?
Hmm. So it's not so much. I mean, it's personal abilities, capabilities, rather than experience, which is just as important, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. I think you can demonstrate management skills in lots of different ways without
Mm,
necessarily having direct reports. It's just perhaps how the way you kind of present that, as with
right,
everything.
right. Okay, here's another question. What is your view on taking a less senior position in a larger business, having been head of legal, general counsel in a smaller business?
Okay, that's really interesting. Um, I suppose when I'm thinking about that kind of thing, I would probably start with what are my 10 wants and needs. What's important to me in a role, what makes me happy, what makes my heart sing on a day-to-day basis, and can you tick those off in your current role? What's your goal? Those kinds of thoughts. I don't see there's any disadvantage in moving from a head of legal role, for example, to a senior counsel role if it gives you different business experience, exposes you to a larger business, different sector, for example. But I guess it ultimately depends on what your end goal is. If you want to be a head of legal at a larger business, then you may have to go in at senior legal counsel to get to that ultimate goal. But I think all experience is a good experience, and it goes back to that piece around there's no fixed path anymore, like that there may have been in the past. So I think it's saying to yourself, it's okay to make this move because it feels right. I like the people, I like the team, I like the sector, I like the brand, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Got another question that actually refers back to something you were talking about before. This is a topic that's dear to my heart as well, so I hope you don't mind me going back to it, which is that you mentioned building up goodwill to be able to balance work and home demands. You said to take child to dance class, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the question: how do you manage that in a new role when you haven't had a chance yet to build up the goodwill?
I think that's a day one 30, 60, 90 observations, reflections, strategy piece. I think that it's important to build your reputation from day one, to manage your peers and stakeholders. If it's important to you, I think that it's worth sticking to your guns on that. And again, it's different in-house to my private practice experience, for example. But I think if you say to your colleagues, I leave at 4 o'clock on a Thursday to take Junior to do whatever, or to pursue a hobby, or to deal with pet care, not just exclusive to having kids, then that will be the expectation that you set. And as long as you put in the hours and you deliver the output, my response would be that's what a good flexible team would look like, with leadership and empowering team members to be responsible for what they deliver, essentially. And let's face it, COVID was, again, not to keep mentioning it, but that was a great example of, now you trust your teams. They're no longer in the office, in our case, 5 days a week. We flex our working week. We work remotely and on a hybrid basis. And if there's stuff that needs to be done on a personal level, then I think it's really important, and you get more out of those individuals if they are treated as a professional in the workplace.
Helen, we're drawing to an end now, but the two things I want to do, because I always like to finish with sort of top tips. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you, what's your advice for an in-house lawyer who's just starting out, to get their career in the right place. But before that, a really interesting question, topic of the outside this is about AI. Any thoughts about how AI could come in, affect people's careers, how they should take it? I don't know, anything about that? Career
Yeah, I mean, I
progression?
can see advantages of using AI as a first pass for us, like a supply contract, for example. But I don't think AI has the business lens that a lawyer or within a business would have, and that wider understanding of strategy and what risk appetite might be.
Here, here,
They'll always need me. They'll
here,
always need
here.
you, Sebastian.
Yeah, we'll control AI. It's not going to
Absolutely.
control us. That's definite.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then, as we really we've got to finish. But that's my final question to you. Top tips. From what you know now, what would you advise an IHL starting out?
Take a different career? No. I would say know your business inside out. Have an understanding of the bigger picture and what you can bring to the table. A contract for a cardboard box to put Weetabix cartons in is really important to somebody, and there's a business reason for that, even though to me as a layperson it's just a commercial contract for a box. So I think it's knowing your business inside out. Take ownership of your own P&L, because I think financial management is really important, and talk like a business person and not like a lawyer, even though you are a lawyer, but try and adapt those great legal skills into business skills. So that would probably be my 3 top tips off the top of my head.
That's awesome. That's great. Helen, you've been fabulous. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for joining. It's been great to talk about this with you, Helen, and I hope everybody's found that really helpful. I think I'm absolutely positive that they will have done. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
And again, thank you everybody for joining. See you again another time. Bye for now.